New Hydra Tactics cards. Thank you, AMG.
In the spirit of the holidays, I've decided to go over every single affiliation's Christmas wish list. What is the one or two things, actually, I've selected two, that the faction needs or wants for Christmas? I'm not really caring if these are fair things, and I'm picking one errata and one new release, and this is what they asked for. So, AMG, get on it. This is what they want for Christmas. And if you disagree with me, we could fight about it in the comments. It'll be real fun. All right. So A Force, the main thing that they want is a new leader. They would love a character that is not She-Hulk to lead the team. Six threat leaders are really tough. Even with double two threats, they can kind of struggle to like be a dynamic faction. I still think there are like A Force builds that are very strong. I think Curtis has proven that in the past, and Eric, one of my locals, has a really strong She-Hulk list going. But with that said, an errata I would like to see is I would just like She-Hulk to be easier to play. She's really unforgiving right now with her her 3-4-3 and 20 hit points as her only defensive mechanics. Off the top of my head, I really like my buddy Eric's idea of damage reduction when she bodyguards, because you can't really put damage reduction on a 20 hit point model in general, but when using bodyguard, having damage reduction would be cool, and I think the main issue is she just needs to increase her core durability. I don't really want to see her become more Hulk-like, if that makes sense. I think I don't really want to homogenize game design here. All right, Asgard. They want Thor 2 nerfed. Uh, I'm kidding. I think mostly this is like a joke, but not a joke, because uh, Thor 2 dominates the entire conversation for Asgard right now, to the point where there are no viable builds of Asgard without Thor 2 in the list. Or if they do exist, they're significantly worse than just building with Thor 2. For God's sakes, I think the strongest 16 in Asgard doesn't play a leadership so that I can play Thor 2 and Hulk. Play as what is Thor 2 Hulk, Beta Ray Bill, and then you just treat Brothers in Arms like it's your leadership in Rainbow Bridge. And that's more impactful than playing a leader there. Or you just play point down if you really want a leadership. As far as a new release, I think that Warriors 3 all on a large base on some kind of like a dynamic, multi leveled, like almost diorama level base would be really, really cool. I think they've really crushed it every time they've put multiple characters on the same base, and I think keeping them on a large base versus the small base like the Commandos or the Grunts have would let them really show off their like godly Asgardian type situation. Avengers are tough to do because they have everything they could ever want. As far as a buff, I would go for Hulkbuster so that we can get 4 playable leaders. I have this really funny idea for Hulkbuster where he gets bonus defense based on the size of the thing attacking him. Probably have to naturally lower his defense and then give him, plus defense equal to the size attacking him. So usually he's like exactly the defense he currently has when they're being attacked by size 2s. But then when a size 4 is attacking him, he's like def 7 against a Hulk or something. I think it'd be really fun. But really, the guy just needs more durability in order to be a 6 threat. For a new Avengers model, I'd like to see them bring in more of the young characters, especially as the TV shows and movies are bringing more of the young characters in. So I'd love to see Kate Bishop. I think the new Hawkeye would be really fun, and especially because we're getting like old Hawkeye and Ronin. I think that Kate Bishop would be a great place for us to go. Black Order. I think for a new release, I think a evil Nebula and Gamora box, or a Nebula and a Gamora that are like the daughters of Thanos box, would be really cool, just as a way to kind of expand the faction. I think it'd be fun to have the characters in there before they turn good moments. I think the reason that Nebula isn't in Black Order is because of how strong a 2 threat would be in Black Order and how much her like reroll mechanic would break Death's Decree. So just give us another build of Nebula. Give us new cool sculpts for these 2 very cool characters that have, like, I think, a really interesting design aesthetically. I think that'd be really fun. And then as far as fixes, I think there's like lots of different things they could ask for here, like gem fix, kind of change the Thanos leadership up. But I think I'm going to ask for a Supergiant fix. Like, I think Supergiant has a really cool design space. I think something like just giving her a medium move so she has a chance to see the table would be really helpful, or giving her a, like, she's the only short base short mover that doesn't have a movement mechanic or an out of activation movement mechanic. Like, Mysterio has tricks and traps, and the Crossbones have aggressive. She either needs something like that, or she needs to just be a faster character. Brotherhood, as far as a new model, I think having like Zorn. If you're not familiar with Zorn, he's from the Grant Morrison run. He turned out to be Magneto in disguise, so I think it'd be really cool to have like a Zorn front, Magneto back, like Zorn on the front, do Zorn stuff, and then when he dies, he flips into Magneto revealed. I think it could be a really fun alt alt Magneto that could play in the more Mystique style lists. And then, speaking of that, I think Magneto needs an update to be more on point with the other high threat models. I really like his core design, but I think he struggles to exist in the modern scenario packet. And with new scenarios coming out, at the time of this recording, we don't know what they are, but I doubt they will be more in Magneto's wheelhouse. I don't think there's going to be more center stuff, more places where he can just plop himself down and be like, I kill anything that comes in this bubble. Being updated to be a more modern sixth threat would be nice. But also, I kind of have not been a fan of their later sixth threat designs. Five threats, been great. Six threats, outside of Clocks McKenzie, obviously. Okay, Cabal. The obvious answer for a new thing would be putting Doctor Doom in, but we've asked for this for every year for Christmas, and much like a child that has asked for a pony for the last 4 years and not gotten it, we've figured it out, so we're going to ask for something a little bit less. And I think something like Agatha Harkness would be really cool. Seeing her either represented as a powerful, like, Cabal tactics card, the way that Bats the Ghost Hound is a powerful Convocation tactics card, would be cool, or it could be a tactics card that is both Convocation and Cabal. I think that would be really fun and really interesting new design space. Or just giving her something more in line with how Agatha is in the Marvel TV shows and whatnot. I think like an ideal way to do either like a support character, because she's known as a tutor, I think it'd be really fun for the faction, give you kind of an option to do kind of like a four threat Zemo, or something more along the lines of some kind of like character that can do work but is also about buffing and helping other characters, but in an evil way. For Narada, fix Sin and Viper. Like, this is the only box that has, I think this is the only box that straight up neither model is really playable at all. And also neither model is really super exciting for fans. I think the Sin sculpt is great and the Viper sculpt is very blah. But it's a shame that Sin doesn't see the table. Fix this leadership so that they can have 4 leaderships again. Or ever, I guess. Convocation, a good 3 threat, is the only thing that Convocation wants for Christmas. They don't have one currently. They really struggle in this department. There were a lot of Convocation players that desperately wanted the Mummy to be Convocation because he would be their best 3 threat by a million miles. I think this would be cool. I think they just need a 3 threat. And along those lines, they should buff Clea. Clea would also solve this problem via the buff, or via the errata route. They need a 3 threat that is good and capable. And I think that is one of the main things holding Convocation back as a faction. Criminal Syndicate is kind of hard to do because they just kind of already got 2 really great Christmas gifts with Crew and Abomination. But I think they could do with another fast 3 threat in what Vulture was kind of trying to be but didn't quite end up being. I think they just need like something kind of fast that's able to go run around and flip points and help them out on like pay to flips or go run down extract runners. Something that's kind of like Black Cat, but not necessarily extract based. Like something that can do the other half of Black Cat's role, the non-extract side. As far as buffs, I would like to see them buff Claw or make a Claw like more interesting. Okay, it's tough. The thing I really want them to do is to take Claw's leadership off of him and just make it, or just take Claw's leadership and make it part of his card innately. I think it would make the character, because I think the character would be fairly interesting in like Shadowlands Daredevil, and anytime you're bringing the grunts, I think it's interesting to bring Claw if they didn't also take up your leadership slot. Claw really needing that makes really needing the reposition makes it tough to justify him. I definitely do still think there are builds of him that are very interesting, but I think if they just made it innate, he would show up more places. He would suddenly become pretty splashable. And I also think the thing that made him come into the meta was Cosmic Ghost Rider being broken and him having a really good matchup into that. And that's not the case anymore, so he doesn't really see play, but he's a cool model. And I think some kind of slight change to him would make him, just to make him more exciting to play. All right, this is where Dark Dimension would go. And since we're here, Dark Dimension, Hellfire, Thralls of Dracula, Legions of the Lost, we're not doing those. It's always Christmas for them. They get every single releases in faction for them. I feel no remorse by saying that they can build anything they want in the game. Like, they don't need Christmas. Sorry. Nothing for you. I'm not doing it. Get out of here. They want a broken model, and they will take whatever next broken model comes out. Okay, for Defenders, new model, Jessica Jones. Absolutely. Like any of the Alias crew, maybe an Alias leadership that is more scenario-based would be really fun. I just really like Jessica Jones as a character. I really liked the show. I think the Alias comic book is fantastic. I would like to see her on the table, and I think she's really the main character we're missing out of Defenders. And then for buffs, Doctor Strange 1 needs work. The model just doesn't quite hold up. I do think his leadership is better than people give it credit for, but the character, I think, needs a redesign, and it can't just be a buff, because he has mechanics that I think are fundamentally unfun in Marvel Crisis Protocol, and I think making the character better and bringing those mechanics back into Marvel is going to be obnoxious. Like, I really don't care for healing, and it's a faction that when they play, if they can reasonably justify both Wong and Strange, they can, like, you can shoot them a bunch, and then they can heal a bunch, and then you can shoot them a bunch, and then they can heal a bunch. And that can be a really frustrating way to play the game. And so I'm worried about that, but I'm more importantly worried about the activated tokens coming out. Because it never feels good to have your character activated and just being like, no, you don't get to play with that toy. I think it's an interesting concept, and obviously, like, I'm kind of two minds here, where like anything that punishes kaijus, I love that, but I also recently lived through the Defender's nightmare, where my Eye Hulk got activated 3 times in a row and then dazed and then activated again, and then the game ended. So yeah, I don't love that, but I just think like a Strange rework would be really fun. Guardians of the Galaxy, more than anything else, want a second leader. We might be getting that, although the Timelines document did not place a star next to any of the new release models, which indicates that they're a leader. It could be a mistake, because some characters we know are leaders don't have stars next to them, and some do. I think like Namor didn't have the star next to him, even though the Invaders Tactics card's included. So the document isn't the be-all, end-all, so they might be getting this, but that's still the number one thing that they want, is they want a way to play not Star-Lord, and also a new leadership might not guarantee that they get to play not Star-Lord, because Star-Lord's leadership is absurd. And so fixing that would be great. I don't know. Getting a new leadership is the number one thing that they want. I think as far as an errata, reworking Drax would probably be where I would start. Drax is a character that was built around synergizing with field dressing, a card that is now banned and really can never come back into the meta because I could not stand this card. But essentially Drax would have field dressing played on him, get to stand back up, be full of power, and be on 1 hit point so he could use his spender and get all the extra dice, and then combine that with probably the Vengeance token and just like go crazy, go nuts. I think doing something like just reworking the character around that, or maybe making that attack similar to Bill's attack where it's based on size, could be interesting. Or you could make it a normal set of dice and have it hand you power equal to their size or something. Like make it a 5-cost spender that refunds in size or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, okay. Moving forward, Hydra. Hydra needs a myriad of cool team tactics cards to use with the Zemo leadership. The Zemo leadership, now that Eyes on the Prize is gone, is essentially not played anywhere. And if it was played, versatile strategy is usually what goes on. It's looking for like a turn 1 thing, a turn 1 goof it can do, and then use its extra tactics card slot for versatile strategy to switch to an actual leadership for round 2. I think that's kind of lame. I really like where they were going with the Zemo tactics card or Zemo leadership, but I think that they kind of missed the mark. I would love a rework on it, or just give them a bunch of cool tactics cards to synergize with it and see where we go. Or an errata, I think just like fix the cards that they do have. Like Inevitable Betrayal is a super cool card that should be priced more aggressively so that it can see play. Same with a bunch of their cards. Like World Domination is almost cool. I wish it was like easier to pull off and had a slightly smaller effect. Maybe it had like a gambling aspect of it. Like you're gonna claim that you're gonna dominate the world this turn. You get the power ahead of time, and if you don't, you lose the power, or you lose significantly more than the power. I don't know. But I think Hydra just needs, they have this like, they seem like they were designed to be the other side of S.H.I.E.L.D. to have this tactics card identity. And they just didn't have the raw power that S.H.I.E.L.D. did. And a lot of their tactics cards are not very strong. And so a lot of the flavor of their faction is missing when they're actually played in a more competitive way. All right, Inhumans. They want a second leadership or some good team tactics cards. We might be getting that with the new box. We don't know, but that's absolutely what they want. They want another leadership, so they have an option to play not Black Bolt. Again, based on the doc, it seems like they're not getting a leadership, but they would also settle for some good in-faction TTCs, as their 2 team tactics cards are Terra Genesis, which is like situationally playable. Like if you're on the right crises, it can be an enormous VP swing and an enormous like gotcha to both get a model off the board, but also it can just miss, which kind of sucks. But I think that one's fine. And then Human Royal Family is okay. They just want more impactful team tactics cards because they have a really good leadership right now, and they just want more stuff. I guess I did 2 new releases for Inhumans. Oh, whoops. All right. I don't know what they want errated. I think actually all their models are in a really good spot. But really they just want like a 2-threat, right? And if their design space isn't a thing that allows a 2-threat, they would like a 3-threat that does something different. Like all of their 3-threats are kind of scenario goofs. They're like Beast or Quicksilver or Ms. Marvel or Elements Lady Crystal. And with those, I think that they're all kind of similar. They're either like fast, extract players or they're fast, secure players. And then there's Crystal, but they just want something that just does something significantly different. Like, I don't know, like a fast damage threat so that you could play like Crystal and another damage character because they have support and they have scenario play, but they kind of lack for fast damage or 3 threat damage slot. So I think I would like to see that. Midnight Suns, they also just had Christmas, so they're kind of hard to do. And at the time of releasing, we got the surprise, or the time of recording, we got the surprise Man Thing reveal. So this stuff is kind of hard to do, but they want a second leadership. It seems like we're getting that in Elsa. With that, I guess we'll just, instead of doing 2 here, we'll just kind of do a general kind of direction I would like to see the faction fleshed out in, since we're getting that, is more of the retaliation theme that like a Ghost Rider has and that other, like some Midnight Suns characters have. I think I would like to just see more of that. And we're getting that in Man Thing, and I think going forward, I think it would be very cool if we had like more reactive retaliation type stuff in Midnight Suns, yes, as the shield player. But I think that would be fun. I think it'd be a fun design space that fits the faction, but isn't fully explored, or could be explored more. All right, New Mutants. New Mutants is a brand new faction, but it's very underpowered, but its leadership is effing nuts, and a team tactics card. So I'm a little bit worried about what they actually want, but I think as far as an errata, they want Magic to just be a little bit better, just like a little bit better leader. She's pretty underpowered at the moment. I think either making her more durable or more deadly would go a long way to making the faction better. Because part of the reason that like Sam was so dominant in Avengers for so long is that he's also just like one of the best 3s in the game, with a crazy leadership. And she has a crazy leadership, but she's in the lower parts of 3 threats. They would love an in-faction bodyguard. They would love something that lets you redirect an attack as a new release, so that they can kind of trigger the leadership in the ways that they want. Right now, they kind of have to splash they either have to splash for a bodyguard or a very damaging piece to put up front. They kind of have the very damaging piece to move way up in Sunspot, but they don't really have the faction, or they don't really have the bodyguard type characters. I'd like to see a bodyguard or a taunt type character that lets them abuse their leadership in some way. Sentinels, new release is easy. I'd like to see Nimrod. I think Nimrod's like a super Sentinel. I think would be really cool. Yeah, just any new release they'd be over the moon with. Sentinels as a faction are kind of disappointing in that they're very, very cool looking models that see very little play, because they're both not strong and not terribly interesting. I think a redesign of the faction is probably required. I would love to see Prime's leadership change to something more interesting, or just update the Mark IV non-primes to just be like a little bit more interesting. Or they could be outfitted differently. Like just print a second card that's like slightly different. Like this one's more good at just blasting, and this one's more good at scenario, and you could play both on the table if you wanted. But I think Sentinels are such great sculpts that they deserve to be interesting. Okay, so Shield, obviously, I'm going to be a little bit biased here, and some of the stuff we talked about earlier could apply to Shield, because Shield's a big faction. A lot of these models are in both things. So like making She-Hulk easier to play would make Shield better. New release, I think any of the Peggy Carters would be cool. Either Peggy Carter as the the post-World War II era spy, I think would be really interesting. Or like the founder of S.H.I.E.L.D., Peggy Carter, could be really cool. Could have a cool leadership, could not. Could just be kind of like Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos. I I think could be an interesting version of Peggy Carter, or on a tactics card could be interesting. I also think just making the character and then giving her a card called the Founder of Shield that does something would be fun. As far as erratas, number one with a bullet for me would be making War Machine a more interesting model, because he's like, in his current form, is almost good enough for us to play. There's like, he still sees him play in Affiliation battle, and I think he's the type of character we want. But like, the character is kind of boring in that he doesn't do anything with his power, and his one outlet to spend his power is reverse of his role, where it's like it's large amounts of damage at the cost of his hit point pool, when his job is largely to be a tanky point setter. So number one for me would be like bodyguard or taunt. I don't. I think it'd be pretty. I think it'd be pretty crazy to give this character bodyguard. So I think taunt would be cool. It would also be cool with. It would give you cool plays with the Nick Fury leadership, where you could like sack to him, trigger aggressive, and then get up into you or into the opponent to be able to start taunting things. I think could be really interesting. Or if you give him bodyguard, you could do like Eye in the Sky as 2 bodyguard range. But yeah, I think giving me a new making War Machine better would be cool for this. Spider Foes. They really only want one thing for Christmas as far as new release. They want a model that does not cost 3 or 4 threat. The whole faction only costs 3 and 4. I know we haven't had a 2-threat release in a very long time, and it's probably fine that they don't have a 2-threat release, but give them a 5, give them a 6, give them something that isn't 3 or 4. And really, a 5 or a 2 is what they actually want, because a 6 could be 2 3s, and I can't think of a 7 threat off the top of my head. Characters that come to mind, I would love a box that is just like the dumbest villains, like Big Wheel or Spot. Or I would love to see them bring in some of Miles' foes, like Prowler. I think Prowler would be my number one. Do him on a motorcycle, do him off a motorcycle, who cares? Prowler would be super cool. As far as an errata, I think that Carnage needs a rework. Carnage is it's such a shame, because I think all the other symbiotes are designed so interestingly. But Carnage, because of his kill mechanic, where he fully heals, moves, and makes another attack, the character can kind of never be good, because he's on a knife's edge of either being the dumbest model in the game or not being very good. And so I think I would remove that mechanic and make him just function more like an actual symbiote, like be able to be stuck in and brawl. Give him a more reasonable stat profile, like making him the nimbler Venom is an interesting place for him to exist, and I think it could be a place that he exists. I also think making bonus one, because I love Spider Foes, Neo Recombinator. As a tactics card, would be cool if you could play it on non-Spider Foes, the way that like kind of the shield cards work, where a shield character has to play the card, but it can be played on anyone. I think that would be a cool way for Neo Recombinator to work, and would make the splashes more interesting. Uncanny X-Men. They want a scenario 2 threat. Their current 2 threat is Honey Badger, which doesn't super jive with how they currently play a very scenario pay to flip kind of game. They would accept a pretty terrible 2 threat as long as it could interact with scenario. I think that is the number one thing that they want. I don't really think any of their stuff needs to be errated. I think almost every X-Men character is kind of in a good place. They're like, X-Men is like a collection of like above average characters, or yeah. So outside of like boring number tweaks, I don't think there's really anything that you would want to do that. So let's do another. Well, I guess like Jean. It kind of sucks to pick a model that they already took a pass at, but I think like Jean being good is very important to X-Men's like fantasy. I think she's very important to X-Men. Her not quite her still quite missing the mark. She's much better than she was. But I think if you just had her have something that was like if you gave her telekinetic deflection where she could spend power to ignore throws to make herself more durable, or if she was just like, I guess, kind of like Rocket, where she just ignored collisions, or ignoring collisions is probably too strong. Maybe like she just ignores terrain collisions, like a reverse Kingpin, where Kingpin only takes damage from terrain. She could only take damage from people. She's able to like catch the terrain like Magneto. I think that would be cool. And I also think just like a great way to get the X-Men community excited is with a gene rework or another attempt to fix Gene. Wakanda new release. I would love to get T'Chaka, which is the Black Panther before T'Challa, or get Shuri in the Black Panther suit. So let's get a Black Panther that's not named T'Challa. I think would be great. Like Wakanda is largely defined by their champion, the Black Panther, and all three of the ones we have the same alias, which kind of sucks. As far as a buff, I would like Killmonger 2 to get something. He does have a high win rate, despite kind of being seen as a pretty bad character with a pretty bad leadership, but his leadership has a high win rate. And I think a lot of that is just from Wakanda being a good faction. I think it's also the pool being a little bit polluted with Spirit of Wakanda wins before that card was fixed, or before that card never got fixed. It was more that Advanced R&D got banned. But I think changing this character in some way. I also don't like that his gun has the trap clause on it, where like if you're within 2, no dice mods, but also just doing the normal builder is just straight better. The only time you would actually use it is when you want it for the 1 power. So why does that clause exist there? Like I guess it's literally better than not having it, but I think it tricks people down the wrong path. I think if the gun just ignored dice mods in general, I think it'd be kind of cool. We'll see. I mean, give him something. I think it'd be interesting to see the model. I think the model's very cool as far as a miniature goes. Moving on. Weapon X. Fix the effing leadership. The leadership clarification, while it makes sense rules-wise, I think sucks. You don't get a token when the character holding the leadership is dazed, and you can't spend the tokens while the character is dazed, and you can't collect tokens while the character holding the leadership is dazed, because the tokens go on the character card, not on the team tactics card. And while you're dazed, you cannot have anything added or removed from your card. That sucks. It makes the leadership real bad. And it was already a bad leadership. And while they're in there, they just need to fix the fact that leaderships should apply to all characters, not just characters in faction. That's the promise of the game, is that like splashing characters in different affiliations gives you different cool things to do with it. And do you really think the Weapon X leadership would be like busted if we were playing like Cyclops there, and then Cyclops was getting +2 dice on top of his 5 dice on defense, and you were like, haha, martial prowess def 7. Do you think that would break the game? I don't think that would break the game. Just fix that leadership. And you would also fix Black Orders here as well, because I think Corvus's does the same thing. As far as a new release, I think Phantom X would be a cool addition to Weapon X, especially because it could be a fun take on grunts. Phantom X is like this kind of, I think he's kind of a dumb character, but he has kind of a cool look, and his mutant power is that like his brain actually resides in like this weird spaceship thing, and that his like physical body is the projection. So you could do like a backwards grunt. Could be pretty fun, where like the thing that looks like a normal model is the grunt, and the thing that looks like it would be a grunt is the actual character. So I think that could be fun. And also just like the bench of Weapon X characters is just not that deep. So I think that could be fun. He also's got kind of a cool look to him. Web Warriors new release. I'm a bit partial to Penny Parker. I think you could give us either version of the character, either the Spider-Verse version that's like the anime uh, kind of like circular robot design, or you could give us the Evangelion one from the original comic. Either be really cool. I think it'd be a fun centerpiece leadership or centerpiece character in Web Warriors. Now the Web Warriors box is we know that there is a Spider-Verse box coming, and we don't really know what's in that beyond Spider-Man 2099. So she might already be in there, and this could look real silly in the future. But I think that'd be just like one of the best characters for them to get. And I think it's silly for Web Warriors to ever ask for a 2-threat. I don't think they'll ever get a 2-threat because giving a 2-threat the Web Depth buff seems crazy to me. As far as erratas, I think the number one with a bullet thing that Web Warriors want is they want the alias rule removed from the game. I might do a King of Marvel Crisis Protocol about the alias rule. The alias rule feels a little bit like a holdover from other game design, like War Machine. The creators of this game were the creators of War Machine, and War Machine cared about character restrictions, and you couldn't have two of the same named character on there, and the reason that rule had to exist was because almost everything in War Machine you could take multiples of. There was a special rule that if there was a named character, you couldn't take multiple of it. But that's already a rule here. You can't take two of the same character in the game. We don't also need the alias rule preventing you from taking like multiple Peter Parkers. And I also think taking multiple Peter Parkers is like really on brand for Web Warriors. Like the Spider-Verse thing is about like multiple versions of yourself and different versions of Spider-Man. Like the Web Warriors faction is entirely just different versions of the same character from different universes. So I think just removing the alias rule from the game would be really interesting for Web Warriors. And I think if they printed it as a TTC, like it just takes up one of your TTC slots, ignore the alias rule, would be a thing that probably wouldn't be strong, but would be a thing you'd find a shocking number of Web Warriors players doing it because they just want to. And I think just pulling the rule would be good. Anyway, we'll save it for another video. But yeah, pull the alias rule. Up next, we got Winter Guard. Winter Guard absolutely want a second leadership, as do a lot of the factions that have only one. Winter Guard especially need it because of Crimson Dynamo being a shape specialist. He's really just like an E-shape specialist or a narrow scenario specialist. He's also pretty good at the C shapes, especially in Winter Guard. And then his leadership is like condition resistance, which is also kind of a thing that should be corner case. So sometimes his leadership is actually just like ball bustingly broken, and sometimes it's like almost nothing. So I think a new leadership for Winter Guard would go a long way into making the faction more playable. And then as far as a buff, I think solving Darkstar's power problems would be where I would go. So Darkstar is like a really maligned character that I actually think is unfairly maligned. If you've never played Darkstar well, the way to play Darkstar is you just make 2 attacks every turn and she teleports herself. Or if she can afford to stand still, she teleports someone else, which gives her exactly enough power to do that cycle every single time. And then with her reroll mechanic, she's slightly better than a 5-die blaster, which puts her in like a better blaster category. The problem is she's fragile, and the rest of her kit doesn't do anything, and she's just a blaster. If you gave her a little bit more access to power, she could also buff defenses of characters, which, you know, is another mechanic that's not like terribly strong in the game, but it wouldn't just straight be a trap on her. And I would want to keep her kind of like guaranteed power mechanic, so I think I'd give her something like the extra power on specific dice faces. And because she's not a smart person, so it probably wouldn't be on skulls, it probably wouldn't be on crits. So I don't know. I don't think we have a version of that that does it on wilds, although she's kind of like a magic user, and a bunch of the magic users have it on shields. So I think just giving her like bonus power when she rolls a shield would be a very good way to start making her a better model. X-Force, I think for my pick of new X-Force character, let's go Vanisher, but he's just like an empty base with like little footprints in it. They could make it like a $10 kit, just make it real cheap. No, they would. I don't think they would ever do that. But I think doing a Vanisher model could be really cool while using him as negative space. Like, put footprints on the base, have him like holding up a bad guy by his shirt, and create the negative space for the character in some way where the miniature doesn't literally exist, but you can see that the miniature exists. Like through the negative space, through the like sculpting, through the action in the scene, I think would be really great. As far as erratas, fix dirty work, make dirty work a playable card. Uh, Hand free power out to X Force would be cool, or make it victory points or something. Give them some way to be like, why do you want to be here over on Uncanny X-Men, and it can't just be Cable's leadership. They're again a faction that's like got cat and mouse as like their main card. Um, and I think making dirty work exciting is on theme for the faction. Servants of the Apocalypse, as far as new releases, they want the new Crisis Pack to not have 15 threat in it. Apocalypse hates 15 threat. It's really rough for him. Chewie, who made a really good run at Second Wind with Apocalypse, was splashing another faction to be able to play 15 threat. And that's a bad place to be. So, in the new Crisis set, I would make 15 go away. I would personally like to see 15 and 16 go away from the Crisis set and maybe introduce 21 and 22. Because I think a lot of the problematic big models get easier to deal with at higher threats. Plus, the game seems to be really interested in releasing 5+ threat characters right now. I think their design space for 5 threat characters has gotten a lot more exciting in the last year. So we can raise the roof on the cost of characters, or the amount of points you're allowed to play, let's say. And then I think for a buff, let's buff Sinister. Let's make Sinister a more interesting, more playable character. He's like almost playable in Servants of Apocalypse. Like Apocalypse gives him a lot of help. I think if they just made the genetic samples work kind of like the Mummies soul tokens, where they did a bunch of different things and not just damage reduction, and can also be discarded to hand out Root with that superpower that also costs power. Because the thing that can hold Sinister back is that his economy sucks. His economy for tokens sucks. His economy for power sucks. And addressing the token side of it, being like, hey, the tokens are easy to get, and when you get them, they're awesome, would allow him to still be a character that kind of has a power economy that you struggle with. So like being able to discard, right now the tokens can only really be discarded for what? Removing, I know they stop damage. Okay, so they can be discarded to remove conditions, and they can be discarded to reduce damage. I think if they could be discarded to heal, like the Mummy, so that way you can, like, if you activate Sinister while he has 3 tokens, it feels really bad because there's nothing to do with them. Like if he doesn't have any conditions on him and he's full, or he doesn't have any conditions on him and he isn't current, like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of ways for like the tokens to both be the thing that you really want and to feel dead. So I think just making the tokens slightly better, either allowing them to be used as healing would be really good, or allowing them to be discarded for power maybe, although again that like kind of fixes both problems. But I think just like a slight buff to Sinister in how the tokens work would be enough to see him, for him to see more play. All right, well that's the Christmas wish list. Let me know what you guys want from Christmas out of AMG in the comments down below, and don't forget that fun is a finite resource. Eggnog.